Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We take the information you share with us, the articles, the research, your own notes, and we deliver a shortcut to being truly well-informed. Today, we are diving into something that affects every single one of us on the road, the science of speed. You sent in sources covering everything from, the hard physics of a collision to how traffic engineers actually decide on a speed limit.
That's right. And it's so important because when we think road safety, our minds usually jump to, say, drunk driving or texting.
Distracted driving.
Exactly. But the data in your sources is just unequivocal. The single biggest factor in crashes, in their severity, is speed. So our mission today is to get past the simple don't speed rule and really unpack the why. We want you to walk away knowing the physics, the law, and even the economics behind how fast you drive.
Okay, let's get right into it with Section 1, the math of mortality. Because before we even talk about laws, it's just physics, isn't it? Distracted driving can cause a crash, but speed is what makes it deadly.
It is. Speed fundamentally changes the dynamics of control. When you're going faster, you're dealing with three consequences that they stack up against you exponentially.
And these 3 points are really the core of the danger.
Absolutely. The first one is the most obvious, but I think we all underestimate it. Reduced reaction time. The faster you're moving, the less time your brain has to see a hazard, process it, and, tell your foot to hit the brake.
And we're talking about fractions of a second that matter.
Huge. If you're going 60 miles per hour, you are covering 88 feet every single second. That's road just eaten up before you've even realized there's a problem.
Which leads right to the second point, the distance it takes to actually stop.
Yes, the longer stopping distances. And you have to break it down into two parts. There's the thinking distance, that's the 88 feet we just talked about.
Right.
And then there's the actual braking distance.
And the braking distance is the one that really gets you.
It does, because it increases with the square of your speed.
So if you double your speed, your braking distance doesn't double, it quadruples.
Exactly. And that brings us to the most terrifying part, the increased crash severity. This is where that exponential math really comes into play. The kinetic energy in your car, the destructive force, also increases by the square of the velocity.
So hitting something at 60 miles per hour isn't twice as bad as hitting it at 30.
It's 4 times as bad. 4 times the destructive energy. It's not a simple trade-off. It's a multiplication problem.
So saving, maybe a few minutes on your trip by going 70 instead of 60, you are massively escalating the risk of a catastrophe if something goes wrong.
That's the critical takeaway.
Yeah.
Your sources pointed to this really shocking data from the World Health Organization. They found that for every 1% increase in average traffic speed,
1%?
you get a 4% increase in the fatal crash risk.
Wow. 4%. That's a huge multiplier. It's a massive public policy issue.
It is, and it gets even worse when you look at pedestrians. The death risk for a pedestrian hit by a car jumps 4.5 times if the car's speed goes from just 50 kilometers per hour up to 65.
So from about 30 miles per hour to 40, that's the difference between a chance of survival and almost certain death.
Almost certainly. And even in car-to-car crashes, look at side impacts. The fatality risk for the people in the car that gets hit is 85% at 65 kilometers per hour.
85.
Speed just turns the vehicle into a much more dangerous object when you lose control. It makes the whole environment chaotic for everyone.
Okay. That breakdown really hammers home why we have limits. But this brings us to what you called the speed differential paradox. We all know going too fast is dangerous, but can you actually drive too slowly?
Yes. Unequivocally, yes. The most dangerous situation on a highway isn't just high speed, it's a big difference in speed. A large speed differential between you and the flow of traffic.
I think everyone listening has felt that. The anxiety when you come up on someone going way, way slower than everyone else.
Precisely. Driving too slowly, especially on a freeway, introduces risk for everyone around you. There are really 3 big dangers that pop up. First is the increased risk of rear-end collisions. Drivers expect a certain flow. If you're doing 45 in a 65 zone, you're not a car anymore. You're a sudden obstacle.
And that forces the car behind you to slam on their brakes.
Which creates a ripple effect. And that's the second danger, impaired traffic flow. One person braking hard forces the next person to brake harder, and so on, until you get those phantom traffic jams that seem to come from nowhere.
And that frustration, that leads to the third problem, doesn't it?
It does. Dangerous overtaking. You force other, more aggressive drivers to make risky moves to get around you. Weaving, passing on the shoulder, all things that dramatically increase the chance of a collision.
And crucially, you can get a ticket for this.
Absolutely. Many places have laws against impeding traffic or have posted minimum speeds. The law understands that being out of sync is dangerous, whether you're too fast or too slow.
So the safest speed is really about consistency with the flow of traffic, as long as that flow is legal.
That's the key. Predictability.
So this all begs the question, how is the speed limit even decided? It sometimes feels so arbitrary, but there's a real system behind it.
There is. It's much more data-driven than most people think.
Yeah.
Engineers are trying to find that sweet spot between safety and efficiency, and they rely heavily on something called the 85th percentile speed.
Okay, break that down for us. What is the 85th percentile?
It's the speed at or below which 85% of vehicles are traveling in free-flowing traffic. Basically, they go out and measure how fast people are actually driving.
They assume most drivers will naturally pick a speed that feels safe for that specific road.
That's the theory. They see it as the speed that reasonable, prudent drivers feel is comfortable.
But hold on, if you're basing the limit on what 85% of people are already doing, doesn't that just reward the fastest drivers? Aren't you just constantly pushing the limit up as cars get better and faster?
That is the big policy debate. And it's a valid criticism, this idea of speed creep. But the engineer's counterargument is that if you set a limit that's way below what feels natural,
People just ignore it.
they just ignore it. And an ignored limit is a useless limit. It creates frustration, you get more of that dangerous overtaking, and it makes the road less predictable, not more.
So it's a pragmatic balancing act.
It is. It balances the road's design, the accident history, and what drivers will actually comply with.
Which is a great transition into the legal side of this, because once the limit is set, there are 3 different legal types, and knowing which is which,
Well,
well, that's everything if you get pulled over.
it is. You've got absolute, presumed, and basic speed limits. Absolute is the most common and the most simple. The sign says 55, you're going 56, you're guilty. End of story.
No wiggle room. The conditions don't matter.
None. But then you have the presumed or prima facie limit. This one is fascinating because it actually allows you a defense.
How does that work?
The posted speed is presumed to be the safe limit. But you, the driver, can argue in court that your speed, even though it was over the limit, was actually safe for the conditions at that exact moment.
For example, going 40 into 35 on a wide, empty, perfectly clear day.
Exactly. But the catch, and it's a big one, is that the burden of proof is completely on you to prove it was safe. And that is an incredibly high bar to clear.
Very difficult to win, I imagine.
Very. Which brings us to the third type, the one that applies everywhere, all the time, no matter what the sign says. The basic speed law.
Okay, what's the basic law?
The basic law simply states that you must always drive at a speed that is safe for the current conditions. This is the law that allows police to ticket someone for driving under the speed limit.
Give us an example of that.
Sure. The limit is 65 on the highway, but a sudden blizzard hits. Visibility is terrible, there's ice on the road. If you're still doing, say, 45 miles per hour and you cause a crash,
You'd still get a ticket.
you could still get a ticket for driving too fast for the conditions, even though you were 20 miles an hour under the posted limit.
Because the basic rule always trumps the sign. The sign is the maximum for perfect conditions.
Precisely.
Okay, so let's move from the law to practical on-the-road decisions. How do you actually figure out a safe speed when the conditions are less than perfect?
This is where so many drivers fail. They don't consciously adjust for weather. And your sources had some really clear, memorable benchmarks for this. For heavy rain, you've got reduced visibility and the risk of hydroplaning. You need to drop your speed by at least 5 to 10 miles per hour.
So on a 65-mile-per-hour highway, you should be closer to 55.
At least. For snow or ice, it's much more dramatic. Your stopping distance can increase tenfold. You need to reduce your speed by 10 to 20 miles per hour or even more.
Honestly, the best decision there is probably not to be on the road at all.
Often, yes. And then there's fog. Fog is uniquely dangerous because it messes with your perception of speed. You feel like you're going slower than you are. In thick fog, you have to slow way down, usually to less than 30 miles per hour no matter what the speed limit is. It's about giving yourself time to react to a stopped car that you can't see.
So these aren't just suggestions, they're critical safety buffers. But beyond safety, there is a huge financial reason to keep your speed moderate and consistent. Let's talk about fuel efficiency.
Yes, this is something people often forget. All that aggressive accelerating and braking just burns through fuel. A steady speed is much more efficient.
So for a long highway trip, what's that economic sweet spot?
For most cars, peak fuel efficiency happens somewhere between 50 and 60 miles per hour. Once you get much past 60, efficiency starts to drop off pretty fast.
And that's because of aerodynamic drag, right? It's that same exponential force we talked about with crashes.
That's the connection. Your engine has to work much, much harder just to push the air out of the way at higher speeds. Think about this. Driving at 75 miles per hour can use up to 20% more fuel than driving at 55.
20%. Over the course of a year, that's hundreds of dollars just gone.
Exactly. It's a massive, quantifiable reason to slow down, and it has nothing to do with getting a ticket.
So consistency saves money and it saves lives. All right, finally, let's touch on enforcement and strategy. First, the consequences. We're talking fines, points on your license, insurance hikes.
And in extreme cases, you can have your license suspended or even face jail time. And the technology they use to catch you is incredibly precise now.
We all know radar.
Right, radar uses the Doppler effect. But now, more and more, they're using Lidar.
And what's Lidar?
It's basically a laser. It sends out a very narrow beam of light, which means an officer can pinpoint one specific car in heavy traffic. It's very hard to argue against.
And then there are the automated systems, the cameras.
Exactly. You have fixed cameras, mobile ones, and the really clever ones are the average speed cameras. They time you between 2 points miles apart, so braking right before the camera doesn't help.
So, given all that, what are the best strategies just to stay compliant and safe?
On the highway, the easiest thing in the world is to use your cruise control. It stops that unconscious speed creep, and it's great for fuel efficiency.
And just being mindful, I suppose.
Just being mindful. Check your speedometer often, especially when you're moving from a highway to a local road, and plan your trip so you don't feel like you have to rush.
Okay, one last skill. What about judging the speed of other cars? That's so important for merging and changing lanes.
It takes practice. One technique is to watch the rate of closure. If the car in front of you is getting bigger in your windshield really fast, that means you're closing the gap too quickly. You need to back off.
We're using landmarks.
Yeah, landmark tracking. Pick a sign or a bridge up ahead and see how quickly the car next to you passes it compared to you. It helps you build that intuition for matching speed. So, to sort of wrap all this up, speed is the ultimate risk multiplier because of that exponential force. Safe driving means constantly checking the conditions against the limit, remembering that basic rule always applies, and really prioritizing consistency.
And that 50 to 60 mile per hour sweet spot saves you money, too.
It really does.
Okay, here's a final provocative thought for you to take away. This one has nothing to do with technology. What do you do if your speedometer breaks? You're on a highway, you need to know your speed, and your dashboard is dark. Challenge yourself to learn this simple analog calculation. If it takes you exactly 1 minute to travel 1 mile, you are traveling 60 miles per hour. You can use the mile markers on the side of the highway and the timer on your phone to practice this. It's a great way to gauge your speed if you ever need to, and it's a reminder that your own critical thinking is still the best safety feature in any car. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.
Please like, subscribe, and get notified.